Hey guys, Brian here from Perfectus Performance with Gavin from Perfectus Performance. We're going to bring you through some really quick running mobilizations for some of you guys. So some of the runners who we work with have been asking, how do we warm up for our race? How do we get ready? We don't have access to foam rollers, we don't have balls, we don't have floss, we don't have all these other things. We're at the race, we're getting ready to warm up. How do we make our tissues ready before we start our running specific warm up? And I think there's three things that we look at when we talk about preparing to do work. And the first one is mobilize. So we want to mobilize the joints, we want to mobilize the tissue to prepare them to move and do everything we need to do. The second one is we activate. So we'll activate the muscles so that we can effectively perform the movements we want. And then the third one is integrate, where we integrate the first two parts into the action that we're going to do. So what we'll look at today is number one and number two. We'll mobilize and then we'll activate. The integration part is going to be very much your running specific workout. So it's not something that we can tell you to do. It's going to be very individual to how you like to warm up for your race. It's going to be what you have worked on. It's going to be what your coach has worked on with you. So it's not something that we're going to change. What we can do is prep our tissues and prep our joints for the work that we're about to do. And that's what we're going to look at today. So Gavin's going to be our lovely model here as we look through some of the things that we need to perform to get ready to do our race. So I think with a lot of our runners and a lot of the people who we work with who run and may not be competitive, major complaints: ankles, calves tight, hips tight, things like that. So what we'll look at today is we'll look at a really quick 5 to 10 minute action on how we can get ourselves ready to perform our running warm-up and then perform well in our race. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get into a lunge position. So Gavin, if you can drop down into a lunge position for me here and drop that back knee onto the floor. So we're going to get into this position and we're going to start to work on our ankles and our calves. Then we'll move into hips, and then we can move into a total lower body and maybe even a thoracic upper body mobility as well. So we'll start here and we'll start with our heel on the floor. As you can see here, Gavin's heel is on the floor. We'll start in this position. And we'll start hunting for space. How far can we push this knee over the toe, keeping the heel on the floor? We're going to move back and forward. We're also going to move the knee out to the side. We're going to move the knee onto the inside as well. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that we're preparing the body to work in all the positions, especially if you're going to do a marathon or you're going to do an ultra marathon. You're going to spend a lot of time moving. Movement's not going to be perfect after hour 3 or hour 4 or hour 5 of an ultra marathon. You're not going to be in a position where everything moves fluidly. We want to make sure that the body is capable of being in the positions that are a little less optimal, and we'll call it less optimal. So you can see here Gavin is working through the different areas, and on the inside here we can see a little shake. This is probably one of the problem areas for Gavin that he wants to focus on. Spend a little bit more time in there. For each one of you, it's going to be individual. You're going to find the area that works for you or that you're hunting for a little bit more. So what we can do now, Gavin, if you push the hip back, and we push back, and you'll hit a little bit of a good stretch as you come back, and then you can come back in, and we can start moving in and out with those hips and get those hips moving a little bit. We start moving back in and out, and we'll feel a little bit of a stretch in the hamstring. We're going to feel a little bit of movement down to the calf, and we can move there, elevating the toe, stretching the hamstring a little bit more, getting that ankle working with us. Perfect. What we're going to do then is we're going to get our knee off the ground at the back, up onto our toe. In this position, we're going to have our back leg straight, and what you'll see here is that we've got closed right leg, the hip is closed, open left leg where the hip is open. And this is kind of similar to what you're going to see when you start running. Obviously a little bit more exaggerated here on the front because we're bent over. But we're going to have one hip closed, one hip open. So in this position, Gavin is going to start to draw small circles with the ankle of the back foot. As he draws this circle, he's going to push his hips towards the floor and let them rise up. What we're really doing here, and this is perfect, if you're short on time, this is the warm-up to go for. What we're doing here is we're warming up the ankle at the back. We're doing toe extension at the back, making sure that our toes will extend. We can get into that nice push-off position as we run. We're working on the hips, we're working on the front ankle, and we're working on both flexion and extension of the joint. Gavin, do you want to swap over the legs so we can see what it looks like from both sides? So let's get that front leg in here. Perfect. We're going to drop down just straight into the toe up. Perfect. And let's draw our circles from here. So as we draw the circles with the back foot, you can see the hips start to move towards the ground, and we're really opening up and mobilizing those hips, getting everything ready to work for us. Perfect. From this position, if you feel that you would like a little bit more rotation from the upper back so that you can run a little bit more effectively without compromising the lower back, we can start to work into some thoracic extension here, reaching towards the sky, opening up that upper spine area to make sure that we have full mobility there as we run, as we rotate. Alrighty, so there's our mobilization. Really, really quick, really easy, something that you can implement 2.5 minutes working on each side, focusing on the area you think needs the most work. Obviously, if we have calf is a little bit tight and we want to spend more time in the calf, we're going to spend more time in this position. We're going to lean forward, keep that heel on the ground, and we're going to get that calf moving to where we want it to be. Perfect. Stay here for me, Gavin. Activation. Second part, activating. We want to make sure that all of our tissues are working the way that we want them to do. So in this position, we can get Gavin to do a calf raise. So up onto the toe, push up, and come back down. If we want a little bit more weight, he can pop his hands onto his legs, or he can lean onto his legs. What we're going to feel in this position is, number one, the calf is going to activate, the toe is going to plantar flex, the toes are going to extend. We're also going to get hip activation. So we're actually turning on this hip muscle, getting it ready so that we can drive that knee high as we start to run, and we can really push off. So we can act on ankles, calves, and hips, all in this quick activation movement. So we looked at some of the positions that we can get into before our race, how we can mobilize the hips, how we can mobilize the ankles. If you have access to a small wall, a raised surface, something that you can do this on before your race, this is a really optimal position to be in. Also, for those who have a little bit more mobility restriction of getting onto the ground is significantly more difficult. For the hips, they don't open up. We can do our exercises in this position on an elevated surface, which is going to buy us a little bit more space in the hips and give us a little bit more freedom to move. So Gavin, what we're going to do is we're going to push this knee over the toe. I'm going to start to mobilize that. So same rules apply. We keep the heel on the surface, we keep it flat, and we're going to start to drive this knee over the toe, hunting for those positions. We're going to bring knee out, we're going to bring knee over the toe, and then we're going to bring knee inside as well. So we want to really hunt for those positions, make sure that we're comfortable being in each of those positions. If you find when you drive the knee out or you drive the knee over the toe that it's not quite feeling right, spend a little bit more time moving in and out of that space and exploring that area so that you can get the tissues ready to work and the joints ready to work. From this position, if we want to work on hip extension, what we can do is Gavin can drive the knee over the toe a little bit. Perfect. Sit a little upright for us, and then drop the bottom knee or the back knee towards the floor. So we're dropping that back. From this position, we can start a little bit contract, relax with the glutes to open up that hip. So contract the glute, hold, 10 seconds, and relax. So we contract the glute, hold, and relax. So we'll do 10 seconds contract, 10 seconds relax, and we can repeat through that as many times as you feel necessary. In this position, we have a little bit more exaggerated high knee position, but we've got hip flexion, hip extension, and it's useful for those of us who are not as mobile or are having trouble getting close to the floor in some of those positions that we looked at earlier. So it's a really powerful move. One last thing that we're going to look at is mobilization of the adductors. So it's not something that we might have hit with our other movement. Pairing this next movement with the previous all over priority hip ankle movement that we've done already is going to put us in a really good position to start running and be ready to do it. So what we're going to look at is very, very simply a lateral lunge or Cossack squat, whichever way you want to look at it or call it. So Gavin is going to set himself up in a wide stance. From this side, he is going to lunge his weight or shift his weight to the left. He's going to move to the left, pushing the hips back, keeping the heels on the floor. Come back up for us, and then we can come to the right, and we move immediately to the right. Perfect. And then come back up. So the key here is as we move into this movement, so move to the left, push the hips back, which is going to allow you to sit into the heel of the bent leg. So come back up, and then move back to the left here. I'll step out of your way. Perfect. And come back up. This movement is going to allow us to move the adductors in and out of a stretched position. But what we also want to do as we hit this extended position with the left leg is we want to pull that foot towards us. So we're activating that adductor, getting that adductor ready to pull us back in and bring those legs together so that we can be ready to run and ready to keep that knee and hip in line as we start our stride. Activation for the glutes. So we're going to look at something that you can do really, really quickly and easily to get yourself ready for the hip extension, to really get that glute firing to pull that leg back so we can get a full stride, full extension to the stride. So Gavin here is sitting on the ground. We're going to get him to lie back really quickly. Perfect. So we're going to do a modified glute bridge, so a single leg glute bridge. Let's bring this foot slightly forward. There you go. Perfect. From there, what we're going to do, pop this leg out straight in front of you. We're going to mimic the running mechanic as close as we can so that it's a little bit more specific to the activity that we're going to do. Gavin is going to bridge up onto his toe first, and then he's going to drive his glute towards the ceiling, or his hips towards the ceiling using the glute, and he's going to drive that knee into that high knee position. So we're activating the glute on one side, we're activating the hip flexor on the other to make sure that we can get into the running mechanic of which we're used to. So we'll do one more of those. Perfect.